Hello, and welcome back to Fashion and Founders, the podcast. My name is Victoria Smith, and this week I'm joined with Delaney Delponti, founder of Cherry Pick. Cherry Pick is going to be your one-stop shop for everything vintage, combining your most loved online thrift and vintage sites into one place. In this episode, Delaney not only gives us a bit of a sneak peek into what Cherry Pick will be, because it is launching this year, so stay tuned, but she also shares some invaluable and really honest advice about being an entrepreneur. From all the questions she had starting out, all the things she didn't know and had to figure out herself for the first time, showcasing how much she's learned and sharing this knowledge for other people. She's very open about it, which I really appreciate as someone with also similar questions to her. And if you don't have a network, if you don't have a mentor, it is very hard to actually learn how to do some of these things. If you listen to the episode with Brigitte and Ellie, the founders of Zero, you'll know that there was this funny moment at the end where they actually referenced Delaney as being somebody that they go to when they have founder questions and need advice. And I genuinely had no idea that they all knew each other. And so in the middle of their episode, I told them that Delaney was actually going to be at the studio in like 20 minutes, and they stayed and we all got to hang out, which was super fun. And I just find this to be another wonderful example of this community being so strong and supportive, full of amazing young female founders, and I just feel so grateful to be a part of it. This episode with Delaney is so information and knowledge rich, and she really breaks things down in a way that anyone can understand because she's been in that position before too. So if you are someone interested in not just fashion tech, but really anything business or entrepreneurship, there is something for you to take away from this episode. From time management, hiring, finding mentors, networking, and an insane story about fundraising as well. I feel so lucky to be learning from people like Delaney through these conversations on the podcast, and I'm so excited to share it with everyone here. So let's get into it. And this week's highlight is the brand Oh What a Match. I actually discovered them through the last episode with Big Silly Trivia because they had done a collaboration. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like everybody, especially in New York City right now, has been obsessed with collecting matchbooks recently, myself included. And this mother-daughter duo was ahead of the trend and has been doing this for years. So definitely go check them out. They have beautiful prints. There's options for custom prints. And I discovered that they have a Substack with tons and tons of city guides for where you can get matchbooks. So that is really a gem of a resource. And the founders of Oh What a Match shared with me that it all started in 2017 when Alice was living and studying in New York City and launched an Instagram page to document her growing matchbook collection. Nadia's love for matchbooks began earlier in the 1980s, while she was also living and studying in New York at a time when restaurants, hotels, and shops widely used matches as a stylish promotional tool. What began as a personal mother and daughter archive of aesthetically pleasing photos and matchbooks from New York and beyond soon became a thriving community of collectors, designers, photographers, and travel lovers. In 2023, Alice and her mother finally turned their shared passion into a business. The now Swiss-based lifestyle and home decor brand they've built in the past couple of years specializes in production of custom matches for businesses, curated products on their e-com website, like matchbook prints and an NYC-themed memory game inspired by the city's iconic matchbook culture. That would be an insanely good gift for somebody. And on their blog, they have a highlight of Match of the Day, a series of interviews with fellow matchbook collectors where they share insights into the hobby and showcase treasures from their personal collections. Alice and Nadia aim to bring matchbooks back into the spotlight by reviving an old hobby, one that blends nostalgia and modern elegance. Matchbooks are more than just a way to light candles. They're pieces of art, conversation starters, and memory keepers. Whether you're a business looking for a unique branding tool or a collector cherishing life's little souvenirs, Oh What a Match is here to spark inspiration one matchbook at a time. This is such a cool story, and their work is really beautiful. Definitely go check them out. Well, hi, Delaney. I am so excited to be here with you. If you can get into a little bit about your background and yourself, that way we can get started.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for having me, by the way. Super excited. Yeah, I'll kind of just dive right into my background. So I have kind of an interesting background. I worked in both fashion and in tech. So I got my start at a startup called Spylight when I was 19. It was like Shazam, but for clothes on TV. So point your phone, press a button, pulls up what everyone wears. Really interesting. It was kind of like the heyday of startups. A bunch of kids from Yale started it. I was one of the first hires. And so I really got to see like what they did right and what they did wrong. Did that for a couple years. I had no idea what startups were before then. And I like actually fell in love with it. I was like, this is so fun. It's fast paced. I feel like every day things were changing. We also were in a unique position. I believe they had about 10 million in funding the first round. Yeah. Again, heyday of startups. A little different now. A little different. One of the founders actually left though and started a company called Spring Health, and she's one of the youngest women to own a unicorn.
Wow.
So great group of people. I left when I was 22 and I started a production company, and we did mainly fashion campaigns for brands. So we worked with companies like Nordstrom, Sephora, think anything from billboards to banner ads on websites to Instagram, whatever they really needed. That was sort of my company. Did that for a while. COVID hit. We had to pause all of our productions. I was stuck at home, and I did what I do best, which is online shop. That led me to Cherry Pick.
Amazing. So you have been a founder for a few years now.
I have.
What has that been like? Like, I'm sure you have so many good tips for time management and structuring, but it's very different from corporate. Maybe you were used to that with like being at a startup beforehand, but what has this been like for you?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting with the time management and the structure. You have to make your own structure, which is tough for some people. I'm somebody, I actually do better with the lack of structure and creating it myself. So I will kind of come up every single day and be like, okay, I need to do this in the morning, this in the afternoon, this in the evening. And I fill my days with things, but I think it's really easy as an entrepreneur or a founder, because you're in charge of your time, to fill your days with things that maybe aren't actually moving the needle forward, just to feel like you're doing stuff. And so I tend to like to look at everything in a whole and say like, okay, like what is actually driving productivity? What is, for whatever it is I need to accomplish, versus I'm just going to fill things throughout my day that make me feel like I'm doing stuff.
Yeah.
So I think I guess you just have to kind of do it yourself. I don't know.
I feel like some people have the entrepreneurial gene and mindset and other people don't. Like I know some people would hate not having any structure.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I also think even as you're like hiring people for your startup, I think that's actually one of the most important things. People that are conducive to that environment, because people that come from like a 9 to 5 and they go into the startup world thinking it's like, oh my gosh, all fun and games. I think of the image of like, we work, we've got beer on tap, like they think it's like going to be super fun. But the reality is you have to be able to thrive in that environment that is a little bit more chaotic.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have somebody maybe necessarily telling you what to do. You have to decide how to build that out yourself.
Yeah.
And so some people I think just they're not the startup type of folk, which is fine. I think it's not a good or a bad thing.
Yeah. Self-awareness is key.
Totally.
And so you're online shopping during COVID. When does the idea for Cherry Pick come to you? And when do you start really taking the time and those steps to build it?
Yeah. I'm a really big thrifter. I love shopping secondhand. You shop secondhand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I love it. I love it. You get it. So pre-COVID, I would spend most of my time and my weekends at thrift stores. I would say 80-90% of my wardrobe was secondhand. And so when I was stuck at home, I still wanted to shop, but I didn't want to shop at Zara. So I started thrifting online. I was looking for a specific pair of like vintage Celine boots, which like I didn't need during lockdown. But I was like, I have to have these. Thank you. They're still in my closet. I found them. Yeah, spoiler. And I found myself going just from eBay to Poshmark to Etsy to The RealReal. And I never really thrifted online before. I'd done it a couple times when I had like very specific things, but because I had all this time on my hand, I just was really frustrated. And I thought, this is a really awful experience. What if there was just one platform where I could search all of these secondhand marketplaces at once? And that was sort of when the idea was born. And then I started asking people. I started talking to people that had built companies before. And I said, hey, like, do you think this is viable? I have this idea. How would I go about building it? What kind of steps do I need to take to have something like this come to fruition? And yeah, that was sort of like the initial journey, I would say.
Yeah. And where are you at now? I think Mary Corlin Downs, who has been on the podcast before. We love
Yeah.
her. She's helping you in some aspect of building this, right? How
She
is
is.
this team building, getting the initial prototype out? How's it been?
Oh my gosh, it's been amazing. Working with Mary and Zach have been like actually life-changing. I would say there was such an advantage to working. One, she's not only an incredibly talented designer and same with Zach, but she deeply understood the problem that we were solving. And that was a huge it was just a big unlock for us because I felt like before when we were building our prototype and we're I was working with different team, they didn't fully understand the problem and there just is a different mindset. And so, I mean, I'll show you the prototype after.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I'd love to get your thoughts on it, but it's better than I could have expected. I'm super excited about it and I'm really looking forward to getting it into the market.
When do you think the launch might be?
We're planning on soft launching in May of this year. It's going to be a private launch, so I'm really excited about that, and then launching to the general public in September.
That's so exciting.
I'm really excited.
Wow, that's huge. And so we were talking about the fashion tech community beforehand. How have you found networking and like navigating this space?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we were talking about this prior to the podcast, but it's still kind of like a new space. And so I think when I initially got into fashion tech, I felt like it was a relatively small community. So I would just email people, DM people, again, network. I met Ellie and Brigitte at a panel actually that they were on, and we ended up hanging out after. And I think now it's just kind of exploding, which is really exciting. But I think, again, DMing, meeting as many people as possible. And I try to also not pigeonhole in just, fashion tech too. I try to meet a lot of people that are also in just fashion and then also more traditional technology because I tend to find you can take learnings from both.
Yeah.
Which is really fun.
So in this like fashion tech space, there's a lot of people kind of coming at this problem of discovery, search, resale, all of these listings that are so unorganized, but at very different angles.
Totally.
And I think we're all kind of building out this puzzle of like the problem.
Yeah.
Have you found that you're kind of collaborating with these other players? Is it kind of too early? Because I think of like Benny and Fia,
of course,
are the Chrome extensions where it's like they're helping you shop along the way.
Yes.
But you're like, oh, everything here is secondhand already. There's like Future Reference, Cash that are like the opposite side of I'm a seller and this is my whole wardrobe. And then maybe eventually this gets onto the platform. So there's all these different angles coming at it.
Yeah.
How have you found like finding your piece of the puzzle?
I think that's such a brilliant observation because I completely agree. I think everyone is sort of tackling a version of the problem. It's interesting to see in the coming years who is going to, and again, it might be, I think there's a world in which everyone can kind of coexist and collaborate, like you said. But I do think, because there's different ways in which you shop, which is why I love a Benny and I love a Fia, because it's great if I'm shopping in the primary market and I'm looking at something, but then I see it in the secondary, that's awesome, right? They're kind of really trying to take those primary shoppers and convert them to secondhand. We're trying to, it's a little bit different, of course, where we really want to be that first destination for the secondhand consumer of, I just want to passively browse, be more discovery first. I know that I want to shop something secondhand. Maybe I don't know exactly what. I can come to Cherry Pick and find the thing that not only I knew I was looking for, but something maybe I didn't know I was looking for. So I think there's a world in which everyone kind of collaborates. And I think there's a world in which maybe something else emerges. And I don't maybe know what it is exactly yet, because I think just e-commerce is changing in general with the advent of like AI, which I think is so exciting. There's some really cool things that are on the horizon, but I don't know about you. I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel personally the e-commerce experience feels super stagnated and really stale. Feels very like everything feels like a Shopify copy-paste version of one another. And I think we're kind of due for some massive disruption.
Yeah. I've had quite a few people say that they compare it to Spotify and how we listen to and find new music. They're like, Spotify is so enjoyable and it's personalized and it's like, oh, you like this song? Listen to this song. Your friend's listening to this right now. And it's so social. There's so much personalization and fashion for the most part right now is so just like you said, it's like, here are bags, buy it or don't. Like it's very one way. And I think people are really craving that deeper experience that you're helping to build.
No, I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. I often use this example of, especially with traditional secondhand marketplaces, they've modeled themselves after a more traditional e-commerce site where it's new arrivals, random edits here and there. And I just don't think that's how the consumer wants to shop anymore. Like you said, bags, buy bags. We're in this generation of hyper-personalization with TikTok, with Instagram. Like my TikTok looks different than yours. And my Pinterest looks different than yours. Why does my shopping experience feel exactly the same as someone else's? It should feel hyper-personalized to me.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too because vintage, I feel like, is having like a moment, especially right now. Like it's the cool thing versus 10 years ago, it was like, that's like a hand-me-down. It was like embarrassing. But I think it's really bringing in this whole new generation, just like making it, the masses now want to be a part of it because it's cool. And Cherry Pick, Zero, like you guys, all these brands, like the aesthetic, the energy, the branding is like just cool and exciting and covetable versus I think sustainable fashion for so long was like, oh, like I kind of feel like I have to do it. I don't really want to. Like maybe it's not cute. It's like not aesthetic. So how have you found building out your typical consumer, like your consumer base, maybe through interviews that you've done, how you're building out not only your messaging, but the aesthetic of the platform, just like all these things that you're thinking about?
I think aesthetic and brand is actually one of the most important things. Fashion inherently is something that people strive for, right? When I put clothes on, it's because I want to be a certain kind of person. What do my clothes say about me? It's my identity. And that's the reason why you buy a $5,000 bag, because it's got a logo or a brand and that says something about you as the person who owns that bag. And I think we have a really unique opportunity with Cherry Pick and with, I would say, secondhand in general, to make it feel cool and aspirational and aesthetic, and really focusing on that, because at the end of the day, as much as I deeply care about sustainability, and obviously that's the added benefit of shopping secondhand is it's sustainable, but I think the first thing and the most important thing is it cool? Is it something that people are going to do and shop before they shop at Shein or Zara, right? And I look at like a Zero, right? There's such a great example of sustainability doesn't necessarily have to mean like crunchy granola kind of, not aesthetic or cute pieces. And I think there's an opportunity also to, just from a brand side, to really create a platform that speaks to those, I would say, cool girls and guys, because I don't feel like there's really an affinity to one platform right now. I think you posted about the Chloe top, which by the way is so cute, but if like that Chloe top was on eBay, I'd buy it on eBay versus the real. Like I don't really care. I'm just getting the Chloe top. But I think there's opportunity to build a brand as well.
Yeah, what you're touching on reminds me, I was listening to the BOF podcast. I think it came out like last month, but they were talking about the future of resale. And the person they had on was saying that they think the next challenge these companies will face is that these brands have like no loyalty.
None.
The customers do not care. If you're a seller, if it sells on Depop or Poshmark, you want the money. And if you're a buyer, it's like, I don't care if it's eBay or Mercari. I want the best price and I want the piece I want. Maybe if you're like a top Depop seller and you have like thousands of followers, but for the most part, people simply don't care. And I think the next round of businesses to innovate in this space will be like you, where it's like everything is here. We're helping the people spending the money. So how have you been navigating conversations with like Poshmarks, for example, or maybe small vintage sellers are going to be on the platform? What are they desiring and needing to grow?
Yeah, it's the conversations actually go, again, very, very well, smooth.
Yeah.
We're really only benefiting them at this point, right? Exactly like what you said about the customers don't have loyalty to one platform. I'll use my example at the very beginning when I was searching for those Celine boots. I ended up finding them on eBay. I never would have shopped on eBay prior. And so we're really just giving them a new channel to acquire customers. They're thinking of us as one big customer acquisition. You know, we're lowering their costs and helping put their products in front of people that maybe would never have shopped on an eBay or a Poshmark just because simply they don't go to that platform,
Yeah.
but would happily buy from them because they don't really care. It's still the product they want, maybe better price.
Yeah.
So I found that honestly, conversations go well.
Yeah.
Which is great for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what would the customer journey be like once Cherry Pick is out?
Yeah.
Do I find it there, then I buy it on an eBay, for example?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Great question. Yes, you would check out on their platform, which is great for us because it gives us billions of product immediately and no liability.
Yeah.
So again, if somebody ships out a shoe that's inauthentic, we're not liable, which is great. But I do also think universal checkout is really important. So that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
And tough if you're doing the individual sellers on one platform.
Yeah, less than like the real.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And how has building out a team been for you? How has been like, I know you work with Mary, but I'm sure you have other people that you've been working with for like advisors or other roles.
Yeah.
How is that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's been great. I think team is probably one of the most important things when building a product in a company. So really just finding people that understand the problem that we're solving, what we're building. And I've been really lucky to work with some amazing people. And again, Mary and Zach are just so wonderful. I think it's been, and having advisors too, that's been huge.
Yeah.
Having people that have built companies before, building out that advisory board, having people that I can talk to and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, or what are your thoughts here? I need to hire an engineer. How do I go about doing that? How do I'm non-technical. How do I structure that conversation? So it's been really, really lovely.
How did you go about building an advisory board?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. It really started with me just emailing people. I was emailing people, meeting people in the space, and kind of when I was initially starting to actually build Cherry Pick out and being like, is this something I should do? Should I not do? I heard unanimously get an advisory board, have mentors, have people you can talk to and call when you're not 100% sure about certain things. And so I just started meeting with people. And then there were certain people that I would maybe meet with casually, and they started really showing up for me before they were even on the advisory board, connecting me with people, spending time, hours out of their week to just sit and talk with me. And I was like, you're a really good person. You're super smart. You've already done X, Y, and Z for me. Why not give you a little bit of equity and have you sit on my advisory board? And now you're even more incentivized to help me along the way. So
that's a big step, I think.
Totally.
And to have that validation of someone who you really look up to and has done it or is in a really cool role currently, to be like, I'm willing to invest my time into you. I think that's the most valuable thing. Beyond money.
Absolutely. And like, that's one thing I learned too. So at the beginning, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this person has a name. And so I want to give them equity to give them, have them sit on my advisory board because that looks good to investors, right? But then, one thing I actually learned from one of my mentors is she's like, let them do stuff for you first. And once they prove that they are actually helpful and useful, then you can give them some equity and then have them on the advisory board. But I would get so excited, like, oh my gosh, this person's X, Y, and Z, by kind of flipping that mindset. And once I noticed there were some people that I would have definitely had on my advisory board that ended up actually not doing anything. And I'm very happy I didn't give them any equity because they promised X, Y, and Z. I'm going to intro you to this. I'm going to help you with this. And just, didn't actually ever follow through. So not actually good advisors.
Yeah. Well, thank God for that mentor giving you that advice.
She's great. We love her.
Have you fundraised at all? Have you been doing that? 'Cause
Yeah.
maybe it's a similar process.
Yeah, we've raised about 700,000 friends and family.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. We're about to go out and raise our pre-seed round actually. And that has been a journey. That was very very, very interesting. And I have so many thoughts on fundraising, and there's best practice. Everyone has their opinions on it. But I would say the biggest thing when I first started this, I knew that I couldn't fund this myself. I knew it was going to be something I would have to raise money for, but I had no idea how to raise money.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? Who do I go to? How do I ask people for money? How do I collect money? Right? I had no idea what a safe was, what a convertible note was. Well, same thing. Safe, convertible note, what evaluation I should be raising at, what a venture capitalist was, all of that. I had no idea. So I ended up kind of figuring this out myself, teaching myself, having a bunch of people kind of tell me what I should do and not do. But it's just a totally different world. And it's definitely, it can be brutal. And I think as a woman, it's a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you learn all these things? I know you said you were like asking people questions in your life, but were there resources you went to? Were there YouTube videos? Like, where did you go?
Totally. It's so funny because when I first started and I was like kind of shopping around Cherry Pick, I was going to a bunch of people that had had companies before. And I went to this one guy and I was telling him about it. And I hadn't even started it. Like I had no pitch deck, I had nothing. I just telling him about the idea. And he was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. I want to help you get money. My girlfriend's family happens to be worth about $9 billion. She'll fund this. And so I was like, oh my gosh, fundraising's so easy. Like, when everyone's saying it's so hard, like you just have a good idea and people give you money. Like, this is great. And so like I meet the family, I meet the girlfriend. We end up doing like this 2 months of diligence with the family. And again, I put together a business plan. We literally had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to invest, she was going to invest $1 million. And last minute, she pulled out. Like
Really?
Last minute, everything was all good to go. Last minute, she just like pulled out. She did, though, send me a I'm sorry I backed out vintage Chanel bag. I know. It's insane. Which was the most insane thing that's ever happened. And I was like, okay, that's crazy. It was the best thing that could have happened because since I didn't know anything about how to price the $1 million, the valuation of the company, I would have given up so much of my company for basically no money. It would have been an absolute disaster. I would have been stuck with, this family that probably wouldn't have been good investors because they're, just billionaires and not actually helpful. And so I was really lucky that happened. And I ended up, actually it was my lawyer who was a startup and venture capital lawyer, that he had a 40-page document that he wrote himself that was like, here's how you raise money. Here's what dilution is. Here's how much equity you should give a co-founder. And it was all just kind of in layman's terms. And I just started, again, reading, learning. There's a couple books I recommend. I think one's called like literally like venture capital.
For dummies.
Yeah, like literally something like that. I actually have like there's like the Lean Startup. I recommend anyone who's starting a company read because it's probably the most important thing. Understanding how to raise money, at what terms, to make sure that you're not, screwing yourself for the future. And it was crazy. And then I went out to actually go raise money and turns out it's really hard. It wasn't as easy as just meeting someone and them being like, here's my billionaire girlfriend's family money,
That is so crazy.
It was crazy. Yeah. I was definitely, it was a very interesting experience.
Yeah. Like the day of or like right before, she was just like, no.
Yep. They were supposed to sign and send, and I like hadn't heard from them that day. It was very odd. And then,
she sent you a vintage.
She sent me a vintage Chanel bag. From what goes around comes around.
Oh.
Yeah.
What did the bag look like?
Oh, I have. I'll show you a photo. It's so cute. Yeah.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
I've never heard anything like that.
Yeah, it was. No, that's not normal. It was the most insane thing that ever happened, but also really good taste on her part.
Yeah.
Loved that it was vintage. She really.
I was like, did you sell the bag to use for money to fundraise?
I did actually,
okay,
which is crazy. I recently I was like, you know what? It feels like a full circle moment. I weirdly, and this is a hot take, I'm not a big Chanel girly, and I was like, it feels like the right thing to sell the bag and then use this to fund, little bit of the company.
Full circle.
Full
That's
circle.
Like a good origin story.
Yeah. It was. I mean, at the time, would I have preferred the $1 million? Yes.
Yeah.
But looking back, I'm like, wow,
Kind of like a savior moment that you didn't go into that deal.
It really was. Yeah. It was honestly probably the the best thing that could have happened. And it's a great story.
Yeah. I think I'd be like a little scarred to fundraise after that.
Oh, well, now every time an investor tells me no, I'm like, where's my Chanel bag? Hello, this is what's supposed to
You're
happen.
like, okay, Anne.
Yeah,
I'll send you
and
my address.
exactly. I'm like, hello. Yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow, I've asked a lot of people about their fundraising stories, and I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I've had some more classic ones of obviously you get some misogynistic male investors that say some crazy things, but those are unfortunately standard. This was just absolutely wild. But no, when I first started fundraising too, I was just cold emailing every investor being like, take a meeting with me. I had no idea how to structure a pitch, how much to value the company at, that there's an actual way to run a fundraising process. It was a really interesting experience. I think I got about 100 no's before I got capital from someone I didn't know. My first initial and friends and family were people that knew me. They were investing in me as the founder, but it took at least 100 meetings before somebody I did not know personally wrote a check.
Yeah.
And it was like the best feeling.
I mean, yeah, that's huge. And I think that just speaks so much to you as a founder that you just keep getting up. Because after a lot of no's, it can be like, am I the problem? But
totally.
You're not. You just haven't found the right person and the right match. It really isn't you or your idea. Do you have any tips for if you do keep getting those no's, how do you pick yourself back up and go to that 77th meeting to pitch?
And it's one of those things where I think it's frustrating to hear that everyone's like, it takes 100, no's before you go to yes. But it is the truth. And I think the tough part about being an entrepreneur is you have to be so self-motivating. It is hard. Some days you're just like, I just don't want to get another no. My joke is that I'm a cockroach. You just can't kill me. I'm just not going to die.
A cockroach with a Chanel bag.
Exactly. Cockroach with a Chanel bag. Exactly. And so I think, honestly, there were also reasons why. I would always ask too, cool, you said no, why? Tell me why. If I'm getting the same thing over and over again, oh, yeah, it's because I don't think the market's big enough. Oh, it's because, your team, you actually don't have a good enough team, right? If I'm getting the same things over and over again, I think it's good to look and reevaluate. I think that with every no, you're like, okay, I learned something. Let me just kind of adjust this a little bit. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but it can get, it's brutal, right? There definitely have been days where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. But then you get that yes, and it's great. I would say keep pivoting and iterating is the biggest thing, because there's some phrase where it's if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, you're going to get the same results, and you're going to feel like you're going insane.
Yeah.
So you got to switch it up a little bit.
Yeah. If nothing changes, nothing changes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm sure as a founder, it is different every day. But what would you say is a typical day in your life right now building Cherry Pick? Because it sounds like you have some really good time management things going on that I would love to learn.
Oh my God. I'm a little bit of a psychopath for sure with that. I have a crazy morning routine that I like to do that kind of helps me get in the zone. Oh my God. I'm going to sound like a crazy person. I'm one of those people. I love to optimize my time. I meditate. I have a sauna blanket. I
haven't heard of that, a sauna blanket.
Oh my God. Game changer. It's higher dose. Okay. My place, unfortunately, is not big enough for a sauna in the future. Otherwise, I would do an actual sauna. But I do a sauna blanket while I meditate, do gratitude, all of that on an acupressure mat. And then I have a little cold plunge. I do that. I tend to find that I don't jump right into work, because when I do, if I have my phone on me in the morning, then it's done. And the days that I actually take time for myself to meditate and journal and all of that, on this, you're like, oh, it's cheesy. It really helps. Mm-hmm. But typically, I'm more productive in the mornings. So I would say I schedule all of my meetings and calls with my team, and any fundraising calls, I try to do them in the morning. I also try fundraising stuff in person. There's nothing beats in person. I'm not a Zoom girly. I think it's fine. But if someone's going to give you money, it's way more likely they're going to do it if they see you face to face.
Yeah.
So always try to do those in person. And then in the evenings, I love networking. I try to do some events, some meet up with also super important, meeting and building your founder community. Because I think being a founder can feel so lonely. So I typically try to do work early in the day, Zoom calls, stuff at home, anything like that. And then usually around mid-afternoon, evening. If I have meetings, I do them in person mid-afternoon, and then evening I try to do something, some sort of networking thing.
Well, I love that morning routine.
Do you have a morning routine?
No, honestly, I should. Like, I do notice the days if I do like get up earlier, do the journal, I've been reading Journey to the Heart, and there's like a
Ooh.
daily passage.
Love.
It's like super short little paragraph. And I noticed that the days I do that, don't go on my phone, I'm
Yep.
so much like more clear headed. And I think then it takes the days where it's like I do immediately jump onto my phone to be like,
Totally.
oh, I don't feel good.
Totally.
So
I have this thing. It's called the brick. I'm actually obsessed with it because I'm fully addicted to my phone, like everybody else probably. It is like a literal, like it's like a magnet, and you tap it and it locks all of your device, like your Instagram or whatever it is that you want to lock, like your social apps. The only way to unlock it is you have to physically go and tap it again. So it's like retraining your brain. So I try to lock my phone in the evening, and then in the morning, if I want to go on Instagram or whatever, I have to like get up and go into my kitchen. And I'm like, that's too much effort. I'd rather just not be on Instagram.
yeah, I haven't heard of that. That's interesting.
It's really cool, right? Because I bought all of the like, blocking apps on my phone, but I'm a psychopath. I just delete them.
Yeah.
I'm like, you've made it so hard for me to not get not get into my Instagram. Okay, deleting it. I need to go on Instagram right now.
Or on TikTok where it's like you hit your screen time limit. I'm like, okay, ignore.
Yeah, ignore it. Exactly. I'm like, guess what? Don't care.
Yeah. I know the like fake TikTok ban genuinely to me felt like government imposed screen time limit. They're like, you guys have had enough one day without TikTok.
Yeah.
Like,
and
that's what it
we
felt.
all melted, Yeah.
People were like sobbing on the internet.
They were sobbing. There were tears.
I know.
Yeah. Crazy.
Crazy times.
I do. I'm like, I kind of would like that though. If they were just like, yeah, we're just going to like turn off TikTok or Instagram for a couple hours every day.
I think that would honestly be like a good use of power.
I agree. I mean, my brain just melted. My attention. I think there was some crazy stat where the average Gen Alpha, is that the one that's below Gen?
Below Gen Z, yeah.
Their attention span's about like 1.3 seconds.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Well,
it's not great.
Wishing those teachers some luck.
Yes.
Because that's insane. So you mentioned also networking in the evenings. How have you found the community here of founders in like this fashion, tech, innovation, sustainability space to be in LA? Or do you find yourself kind of on Zoom as well? Or are these like in-person events?
I kind of do a little bit of both. I'll do Zoom to meet with founders. Like I just love meeting other people and just building community. But I do try to do like as much in person as possible. There are so many events like on Eventbrite. There's all these different like private members communities, things like that. For founders, there's something always going on. You're in LA, you're in New York, something's always going on.
Yeah.
I tend to also and I try to network outside of just fashion tech. And I actually really like being involved in just the tech community because I tend to find there's so many innovative things happening with technology in general that we in fashion tech can kind of take and can apply. And so if you're in the same environment all the time, it's hard to come up with new innovative ideas. So I tend to like to throw myself into different there's this one meetup. It's like tech breakfast or something. I'll forward it to you.
Yeah.
And it's more traditional technology, but it's like, I'm sitting next to a guy who's doing like cloud seeding, which is like, I don't know if you know what cloud seeding is.
Not really.
It's where you take drones, you put them into a cloud, and it seeds literal chemicals that causes the cloud to rain. Crazy things, like just insane things. You're like, whoa, this is wild. And I tend to find that it's just really fun to be around people like that.
Yeah. Learn something new and like out of your hemisphere. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very cool. Okay. I know Cherry Pick hasn't launched yet, but what is your vision when you are building this? Like, doesn't have to be next year or 5 years, but just like your ultimate goal.
Yeah. Honestly, I see Cherry Pick as being the first and last destination for the secondhand consumer. It should be fun, easy, effortless to search and shop across different secondhand marketplaces. You should be going to Cherry Pick before you go to a Zara. And that's the thing that's missing right now. It's easy to shop from the primary market. It's not easy to shop from the secondary market. Therefore, more people are going to shop in the primary market. If we can make it easy and fun and really be that destination for that consumer, I just think it's really, really exciting.
And that would just be so game-changing. Sustainability-wise, it doesn't
Yeah.
need to come up in your marketing,
Yep.
but it will just help that by displacing a firsthand or fast fashion purchase
Totally.
with something secondhand at a competitive price, competitive style.
Yep.
So it's so important.
It's so funny because I think, I mean, obviously, as we talked about before with brand and sustainability is a deep part of like obviously my personal mission. But I think if it is more just easy, frictionless, it does displace and it's great.
Yeah.
And I think that's really more what people actually care about. And as much as, again, people say the sustainability, they care about it. If they really did, they wouldn't, drive cars, eat meat, fly anywhere. It's a great added benefit. But at the end of the day, if something is easier, that's why, you see Shein growing so much, right? It's cheap. It's easy. People are going to buy it. Same with Amazon.
Yeah.
It's a great example. Just efficient and easy, unfortunately. And so people are going to choose that option.
Yeah, because I think there are some people, I sometimes find myself in this category of like, you actually enjoy the process and the hunt of finding something vintage. But then there are times where I'm like, I want to buy this secondhand, but it's so time consuming to find it.
Totally.
And I have all these like different tabs open. I'm like, oh wait, this one just actually sold. That was my first choice. So now I'm like back to square one. And if that could be consolidated, just like the time I would save would be game changing.
Yeah, I think about a Postmates or like in I guess the tech space. I think like a Postmates or like an Uber or Airbnb, right? And what they did really well is they give you like time back, right? Postmates gave you time back. I don't have to go and pick up food. Uber, I don't have to wait around for a taxi. It's really efficiency. It's time and also trust, right? They're building trust with the customer too. Of like Airbnb, you're at someone else's house. You have to like build that trust.
Or Uber, you're in someone else's
car. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think there's still also a little bit of lack of trust in secondhand as well. People are like, is this real? Am I going to get something that's fake? Is it going to be stained? Am I going to get scammed? And so I think if we can give them their time back and then also build that trust, I think there's some magic that can happen there for sure.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. I think other startups, I'm sure they're already beginning, but I think we'll see more in authenticity and returns in secondhand because that is a major, major pain point. And I've seen some really funny TikToks of, I think specifically on Depop, sellers like teenagers, like selling like a pair of jeans and they ship it in literally like a cereal box. And I genuinely don't know what I would do if I go to my door and I have a package in like a Cheerios box. So I'm like, I don't know how they're getting away with that. But like I understand why there's this like lack of trust. But really for the most part, like I think it is good people who are being authentic. There's brands like the Real Vestiaire Collective have so much going on in that space.
Yeah. The authenticity. I love what you just said. And I do think the authenticity piece is going to be a really interesting one. Someone's going to come in and solve that. And that's going to be such a game changer for the space because really just removing that stigma and again, I go back to like friction, but removing that stigma for the consumer and being like, oh, I know this is real. I have faith that like I'm buying something and trust. Like, I mean, I'd be shopping secondhand. I already shop secondhand all the time, but maybe my friend who doesn't would be more inclined.
Yeah. It's exciting to see what's going to come next. I think that stigma of secondhand isn't cool is gone.
Totally.
But the trust still needs to be kind of chipped away at.
Yeah. Do you have anything in this space and like I would say fashion tech that you're really excited about? Like obviously you talk to founders all the time. Is there anything that you're like, whoa, this feels really, really innovative and really cool?
Yeah, I think the first one that comes to mind is I recently spoke to Claire Ilmer, the founder of Future Reference.
Yes.
And actually downloading the product and using it. And I was with my cousin and she works in tech. She's like super corporate tech. She works at SoFi and she's very like product focused. And she was also like insanely impressed by it. And I was just thinking, I was like, this really will be a huge behavioral change for like even me. I would consider myself like top percent of people who like try to shop and sell secondhand.
Yep.
But I still find myself being like, okay, this process is insanely time consuming. I don't want to take all this time to upload something onto Poshmark, Depop, eBay and have it not sell.
Of course.
And the fact that they do it for you by just uploading your email, taking the receipts, cross-listing it for you. I was like, I think that can really actually get this whole new group of people involved in the selling process.
Yeah.
Because I think about too, I saw it on BOF that I might get the number not completely accurate, but that there's like only, I think it was 5 to 7% of what clothing is out there is actually listed for resale.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But then all these companies, I've talked to people in like the real, and they're like, our biggest problem is not having enough supply. I was like, 100 billion garments a year are made. So like, I don't understand how that's possible if only this tiny fraction is out there. But I think it's that the people don't want to like go through the process of the work of putting it out there. So her product focusing on this opposite side of the sellers instead of the buyers, I was really excited about.
I mean, I think it's brilliant. And again, it goes back to what we're talking about with time. You're just giving people time back. And I think there is so much friction in that journey to sell clothes. It makes so much sense. I mean, it's awful. I again, similar to you, I'm definitely up there with buying and selling. The amount of times I will just take my clothes to a crossroads, to a wasteland to avoid listing them because I'm like, ugh,
I know.
It's awful. It takes so much time. But like then I get, pennies on the dollar for my clothes at a wasteland, a crossroads. Let's not get started about the real.
Oh my God, I know.
Yeah, I've got some horror stories, which is such a bummer because I used to sell on them all the time.
Buying from them is great.
Buying, it's great.
Selling is like not the best deal.
Yeah, it's not. It's not great.
Let's do some speed round questions.
Amazing.
Okay. What is your fashion hot take?
Oh, I think that AI is going to drastically change fashion, and I'm actually really excited about AI-generated images.
Ooh.
I know some people are not super excited about that.
What is one vintage piece you have your eye on right now?
Ooh, there's a Celine bag that I'm eyeing on the Real.
What is the best piece of advice that you've gotten?
I would say, honestly, just keep doing it. Just keep going. Yeah, and then also, life makes sense in reverse. So you might not know why that thing happens, but when you look back, there's a reason.
What is one resource you would recommend to people interested in this space? Could be like book, podcast, anything.
Oh my gosh, Mary's Substack, obviously. Is it all things fashion tech, right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. I'm plugging her correctly. That. And then if you're a woman who's interested in fundraising, Women Don't Ask was a game changer for me when it came to negotiation and fundraising.
Amazing. Any upcoming announcements or anything we should look out for this year?
No, but just keep your eye on the Cherry Pick Instagram and website.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we could do this and in person. So yeah, I can't wait to be using Cherry Pick very soon.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. You're a wonderful host.
Thank you.
I love it.